This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of 21 Questions, the Q&A podcast here on KCSN, the questions provided by the KCSN Discord. If you are not a member of the KCSN Discord, you can get there by signing up for the KCSN Substack at kcsn.substack.com. I am Craig Stout. I am joined by my very good friend, Brian Scott Hall of AHPKC fame. Brian, my friend, how are you this fine evening?
Well, Craig, I'm so much better now that I'm hanging out with you. Excited to be able to field questions from, the people that are subscribed to the KCSN Discord. I've done this with you before, and it's always a great time. So, thanks for thinking of me, buddy.
Yes,
here.
Absolutely. I love getting to do this with you. We go way back, and the people on the Discord know we go way back. So we get lots of fun questions about food, about hanging out together, about stuff like that. So it really just is, it's an excuse for us to hang out and reminisce. Really good time here. So we will get started here. Arrow asked the question, who is the starting left tackle come playoff game number 1? I like that caveat there because week 1's what we all jump to. Playoff game number 1.
It's a tough question. Thanks, Arrow, for
we're leading off strong.
The more that I have thought about this position, like in a lot of ways, I feel like you could say that it is Kingsley Suamata'ia's to lose, or you could say it's Wanya Morris's to lose, or potentially, depending on how some of these like OTAs and stuff go, it might be, Donovan Smith's to lose. It really does feel wide open right now and completely indeterminable. And that's, I guess, why it's such a good question.
Yes.
I'm doing all this to stall because I truly don't know who to go with. I kind of want to lean Kingsley because to me, it's the most exciting possibility. What I found really interesting, I try as best I can to be like a humble Chiefs fan and learn from people that know more than me. And listening to you guys talk about like the placement of their hips and what angle and all the different things that Andy Reid teaches, many of which is coming from your big, beautiful brain. I think that all of those things to me, although they sound simple, I'm sure they're really difficult. It seems like stuff that this guy should be able to do. It sounds like also maybe the only disadvantage that Kingsley has in terms of like his frame and his athleticism and stuff is just that his arms aren't freakishly long. They are plenty long. Yeah. But if they were an inch or two longer, then maybe if someone is, getting the better of him on the outside shoulder, he could just kind of get that one last shove in there or something. But man, he oozes potential. It's still, to me, sitting here, I guess a solid 2 weeks after the draft, I still have no idea how he was available where he was. Yeah. It's a very special class of players at that position to push a guy like that, a 5-star recruit, like top 30, I think, in his entire high school class, regardless of position. And the BYU connection after he transferred from Oregon is something that Andy certainly loved. All of this is to say, I want it to be Kingsley. If Donovan Smith signs, I think it's Donovan Smith.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But if it's Wanya and Kingsley, I think it might be Kingsley by the playoffs.
I think it's Kingsley. For the same reasons that you think it's Kingsley, all the things that you so eloquently put there, and I really hated the part where you tried to shower praise upon me. So other than that, your answer was flawless. No. I think the parts that I'm hanging on now, it's optimism season at this point. And, 2 weeks after the draft, you feel pretty good about the team. I think the part that has me sold a little bit on Kingsley, he developed during the Senior Bowl. Like, we saw him make strides in some of his technique. The technique was better than it was at BYU. That's not to say that BYU's coaching staff is unable to teach guys. They've got a different offense. They put less focus on drop back passing, et cetera, et cetera. At the Senior Bowl, we got to see a little bit more of that, and it looked better. Like, there were improvements there. He still opened his hips a little too often, still got beat to the inside a little too often, but there were improvements there. Then they go into rookie minicamp, and Andy comes out of this and says, this is the best offensive line that we have ever had at this minicamp. Oh. I love Hunter Nourzad. I like CJ Hansen. I like those two guys. And yes, this is a passing camp, and I'm sure they're drilling screenplays and all of that, and Andy is just salivating at all the speed that they now have on offensive line between these three guys. But the reason that I think that he's saying something like that isn't because Nourzad and Hansen are playing so high above the level. I think it's because Kingsley has been able to make strides. Like, that's what matters. He's going to be most hyped about Kingsley of all of those guys coming out and having a really good camp and be very excited about the offensive line. So my qualm has always been, if we get to training camp, he looks better in training camp, start getting excited about him as a prospect, we might be seeing the early stages of that.
Did you happen to see, I'm trying to scroll back through the timeline here. I believe, yeah. So from Feldman's freaks list, that was like his preseason freak list, he does 101 prospects before the season.
Correct.
And so
going into college football season, yes.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Suamataia was number 3
correct
out of 101 college football players. And the quotes that I've got from this tweet that I saw, the BYU staff says that he's faster than their entire linebacking core. He could play fullback or tight end if he wanted to due to his agility. He hit 21.5 miles per hour during a game. And their offensive coordinator said that he's more athletic than guys like Garrett Bowles and Blake Freeland, recent high and highly thought of prospects. He's just a really, really special talent, and he's got the blend of all these different things that you want. So at the end of the day, I think everybody should be probably pulling pretty hard, because if he is starting a playoff game for you as a 21-year-old rookie,
holy no.
I mean, Beach.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's because we know Xavier Worthy's going to. Like, we're going to get more Worthy questions here. We'll talk about Worthy here in a little while. I think we feel comfortable in Worthy's contribution to this offense. They get contribution from Kingsley as well, like a major one like that. Ooh-wee. The NFL really messed up if that's the case.
What's kind of crazy about that is that, I know that it was talked about at the time, that why are teams like the Bills and the Niners allowing the Chiefs to get the
willing to trade? Yes. Yeah.
If I am the 49ers and I'm sitting there at 63, I simply take that player, especially because whether it's the fact that my right tackle is terrible and just got abused time and time again down the backstretch of the season, including in the Super Bowl, whether it's that, or I can also just look to the fact that Trent Williams, although he is one of the probably better left tackles in the last 20 years, he's now 35, 30.
Yes, he's older.
Yeah. So say Kingsley isn't ready, you have your left tackle in waiting, who is a very similar profile to Trent Williams. I just don't understand, because they end up making that trade with the Chiefs, and don't get me wrong, they turn around and take a guy that's really going to help their secondary. Sure. Raul Green, great press corner, fits in with what they do. Going to compliment Travarius Ward. I was just like, man, I don't know what we did, because I even went into that draft talking about the Chiefs tax. Like, you know what, guys? If we have to pay more just to move because nobody wants to work with us, then we might as well trade up to like 12. Yeah. Just sell the farm. It won't
just do it. Just bite the bullet. Yeah.
And they didn't actually give up a pick in either of those trades with rivals that I honestly didn't think would even pick up the phone if Brett Veach called.
They shouldn't have. I think that no, honestly, like, what do they have to gain? So let's say that Xavier Worthy or Kingsley is not, they don't work out for whatever reason. They just don't work out. It's not, fans of those two teams are not going to look back at that and be like, that was the moment. That was the one. We got them. We finally did it. We got them. We really did. That's not what it is. It only will come back to bite them. Like, it really does. They go through the playoffs. Chiefs win a Super Bowl this year, which, again, they are favored to do. Chiefs win a Super Bowl. Xavier Worthy, Kingsley play big moments. They beat the Buffalo Bills and the San Francisco 49ers on the way. They're never going to hear the end of it. Brandon Beane's never going to hear the end of it. Like,
yeah. I mean, those poor Bills fans. Like, I mean, look, when all's fair, like on game day, all right, I feel bad for Bills fans.
I feel a little bad. Just a little bit. Yeah. All right. Score 1000 season stand asks odds that Luis Rees-Zammit makes the team. Ryan.
I mean, are we talking like a practice squad? Like he's here, he's around.
I think he's talking 53. We could do both though. I like that though.
53. I would put it at 0%. I think that everybody should maybe keep in mind on this guy. To me, he is the equivalent of an undrafted free agent. I know that they probably gave him a little bit of money, but I think that they got like it's almost like they're an MLS team here. They got an international roster spot, but I don't think that they count like it's almost like they can just stash him on the practice squad, and I don't even know if other teams can grab him.
They can for him because Chu Godric caught that one this year again. They put it on Chu Godric again. Yes, I thought the same thing until I saw that they can only have one, and they used it on Chu.
He is an exciting and potentially developmental guy. He's still only like 22 or 23. I think it's cool. If you go back and watch his rugby highlights, I mean, it's undeniable how fast this dude is and some of the things that he can do. It's really impressive, but transitioning from that to football is a huge task. And ultimately, to me, he seems like a guy that would be a kick return specialist that can also, here's one thing I do like about the possibility here. I know that he's essentially like a gunner in terms of like an NFL equivalent. I think that one of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason, that the Eagles have been able to make the tush push or now brotherly shove work is because they have guys that played rugby on their offensive line, and they taught them how that scrum works. They have guys on the line that have done it, and they're teaching everybody. And Zammit is a rugby player. And so we've got somebody that maybe they can figure something out. I still don't know if let Mahomes sneak, but like, I like it. It's like Ken said, it's a lottery ticket. You're playing kind of with house money on him. I don't see any way he makes the 53-man roster transitioning in 6 months from playing rugby. I don't see it.
I think he's got a shot. I think he's a practice squad guy, though. Like, I think he really is. To your point, that was a question. I think he's an almost automatic practice squad guy because Dave Toub is thinking outside the box, and so is Brett Veach with this move. They're going to come up with something with the new kick return rules. We're going to see a little bit of an evolution in the approach with some of them. We've seen Dave Toub get really creative on kick returns.
The two punt returner thing with Johnny Knox and Devin Hester is one of my favorite plays that I've seen in my 38 years. Like, it's
absolutely amazing. Yeah. So, he is an outside-the-box thinker for some of these things, bringing in a guy that he can run some of these ideas by and say, we want this to work this way. What do you think about that? And have him say, well, here's why we didn't do something like that because of X, Y, and Z, because it is closer to like a rugby formation there. Simultaneously, they banned the hip drop tackle. Rugby did as well. Now you've got a guy that can come in and say, again, he wasn't necessarily one of those enforcer types that's really tackling a whole bunch of guys. And, that's not what his role was for his team. But he was trained on it. He knows what they needed to do. He knows the steps that they needed to take. If this is simply an informational player that they're going to stash on the practice squad, it is worth every penny that they spent on this guy. So I think that he's going to be a practice squad guy. I don't think that he's probably going to be a 53-man roster guy. We might see a change, though. Again, he's going to get a chance to show it. I think they're going to give him every opportunity to return kicks in the preseason, in training camp. And it just might be one of those guys that when the lights are on and he shows out, and it's like, what are they going to do? Let another team try and poach this information off him? They don't want that. So I think that he can play his way on there. I'm not shutting the door on it at all. I think he's just much more likely that he's a practice squad player at this point.
I really like the idea that his brain is as valuable as his skill set for the team, that it makes him an interesting wild card. But when I try to think about the roster construction, it's what position are we listing him at? Does he become a running back on your roster, or is he considered part of your specialists? Do you suddenly have a 4-man specialist group instead of a 3-man specialist group? And I think that last year, if it taught us anything other than, hey, Super Bowl again, that was great. Yeah. But it's that there is a lot of flexibility on this roster, even when we think, well, Andy Reid sticks to these norms and whatever. We carried 8 wide receivers. So they can find a spot for Luis Zamet. Yeah, I believe, and so that's it's sure. I guess maybe 0% was a bit harsh, but I would say he's not making the opening day 53-man roster.
He's not locked in. No, I don't think he's by any means locked in. So yeah. Positivitoasty says, which rookie, either drafted or UDFA, are you most rooting for the Chiefs?
Most rooting for.
Yeah.
Is it like the guy who he just I guess I can take this any number of directions.
Yeah, you can.
I'm going to go with Worthy, and the reason is I feel like he is being questioned in a way that feels like an affront to my general manager's character. I'm very frustrated at the way that people are questioning what Xavier Worthy is, what he could become. I don't know if you saw, I have been really trying to dig into this guy's stature, because they say, people are trying to say there's very few historical precedents that a guy this small, and gosh, the minicamp photo of him in the middle of
where he looks like the little brother of all the offensive line. Yeah.
I think Dirk's caption was, "I'm here to play football, guys." Just, he looked so small, like the freshman on the varsity team or whatever. I have been really trying to get down, scrape the bottom of the barrel and figure out what is the guy that gives me a lot of hope about this player. And where I landed is Jordan Addison.
I like that.
He is, I think, 8 pounds lighter than Jordan Addison. They are basically the exact same height with the exact same arm length and hand size. They are basically built. On game days, they should be exactly man for man, looking exactly the same on the field. And Xavier Worthy has all of this speed and explosion that Addison does not. I think that he's as good a route runner. Addison had about 300 more yards in college, despite having a 1,700-yard season with Kenny Pickett. They both played 3 years in college. They came out as true 21-year-olds. There is a lot there, and I just really like the way that it looks in terms of how successful he was as a rookie, even with Justin Jefferson got injured, even when they went through 3 or 4 different starting quarterbacks. That kid was a player last year. And to see Xavier Worthy against Division I college athletes as an 18-year-old just go out and he was truly a dominant player at 18.
Very. Yes.
And they talk about how smart this kid is, how easy the transition is. This seems like, especially with the door open because of some of the Rashee Rice stuff, I'm rooting really hard for Xavier Worthy, not only because he can make a huge impact on the team, but I just want to, I think that some of those, like, guys that like break the doors open to say, like, we're gonna trash some of those historical precedents. I love that type of player. Got into, Tank Dell and Josh Downs and some of those guys last year too. Like, give me the really fun players like that do things that most guys can't. And also kind of stick it to the man a little bit.
Yeah, I like that.
Ring for one.
I really like that. Trust me, my good pal Nate Tice will hear from me every time Xavier Worthy makes a play. I will make sure that everybody that he knows, Chiefs fans, I got this on lock. You don't have to tag him. Leave my man alone. I will personally send him the one. Those will actually hurt worse than your tweets will. So I got this. For me, it's Hunter Nourzad. I've been calling this since January. A guy that just locked in, that made the most sense in the world. And watching him before we went to the East-West Shrine Bowl, it was one of those that I went, why am I not hearing more of this guy? Why am I not hearing more about them? Then I turned on the Ohio State tape and I went, oh, okay, I get why we're not hearing more of it. It's not great. It's really not great. So I see
Michael Hall specifically. Like, is that who? Yeah, that's
everybody. Everybody. He struggled picking up twists and stunts in that game. He really struggled a lot with a lot of different elements of it. But that was the outlier. And so I think that people turned on that tape and went, no, that sucks. That guy sucks. I'm not paying attention to that. I watched him against Illinois, lining up against that defensive line, which is a really good defensive line. They just had a first-round draft pick, or not a first round. He went early second, but, it went very early. That was a very quality player, and he was just so good against him. But it was talking to him, actually sitting down and interviewing him and listening to how his brain works, listening to how he, targets things pre-snap, the way that he judges concepts, the way that he moves his eyes throughout the different processes as he's looking for this guy. Okay, you got Theo Johnson kicked out that guy, so now I need to move my guy out here. And, describing all that. We talk to these guys all the time. We ask their favorite run concepts. We ask what they're looking for. We ask for that sort of stuff. We don't get that kind of detailed answers. And it's not because those players aren't trying to give us good answers. They are. Hunter Nourzad just conceptually thinks of the game differently than a lot of the guys that we've talked about. The fact that he's got tackle experience, the fact that he moved up in competition going from Cornell to the Big Ten and immediately was honorable mention Big Ten and then second team all Big Ten in his 2 years that he got to play there while kicking inside, again, played left guard, went from right tackle to left guard, earned honorable mention left guard, went to center, earned second team Big Ten. Like, guys don't do that very often. You don't have that kind of versatility. It just made sense for the Chiefs. Getting to talk to him, watching how he works, I just see how much it means to him, the passion behind it, everything like this. So I'm really rooting for him, not just because I was right about a guy for once, blind squirrel finds a nut and all of that, but because I just really love the way his approach to the game occurred when we got to talk to him. So just really fun there. All right.
For the draft pick that you're rooting against, Craig.
Okay, the draft pick that I'm rooting against, Bo Nix, because I'm really going to let them know here, guys. I'm really going to, they think that they've escaped that because of all the Atlanta Michael Penix stuff. I'm still letting them know. Don't worry. I got my bases covered here.
Okay.
All right. Nick Johnson asks, any new restaurants that are must-try suggestions for you, Ryan?
Does it have to be new, or can it just be new to conversations that we have?
Yeah, new to conversations. Yeah.
All right. So tonight for dinner, my wife and I had what is I would say it's probably our favorite Chinese takeout, and that becomes such a staple for so many families that I feel like it's kind of a universal thing. This place is called Rice House, and they have a couple different locations here in Kansas City. The one that we go to is State Line, almost at like 135th and State Line. Okay. But there's also one over in Lenexa on 87th Street. And my wife says that they have the best crab rangoon. I'm not like a huge crab rangoon guy, but she's like, they are literally the best. A friend of hers is very, very picky. And she ordered their fried rice, and she now wants to eat at Rice House like 3 days a week. It's very consistently good most of the time. What I want to recommend to people, and I know that there's going to be a lot of folks that are like, Ryan, I don't think I want to order that for my dinner. But honestly, like 7 out of 10 times that we order, I end up ordering Sichuan green beans.
Oh,
and that is largely what I eat. And they're just these like savory, spicy, but because of the way that they make it, you get almost like a chili crunch out of it because of the Sichuan that's in there. They're just so good, man. And I mean, it's like almost pretty much any of the Chinese takeout places. Don't get me wrong. You're not going to get $5 entrees in giant styrofoam boxes, but it's also, I don't know. It's a little bit more, I'd say, upscale, but it is not expensive. Mostly what I appreciate about it is that, like, it's not one of the Chinese restaurants where 75% of what they do is fried food in sauce. Mm-hmm. They're like, you go get like Kung Pao or something like that, and it is cut up chicken thighs that were cooked really well. They're not breaded, and it's just delicious. I love Rice House.
Okay, I got one. I know that it's very local to me, and I know that we are mostly a Kansas City area, but I actually do have one here. And it's called Marco's Hot Dogs and Tacos. Stay with me here. It is a taco stand here in my town, up north. Got to drive a little bit. Every hot dog is wrapped in bacon. The default toppings are pinto beans, onion, tomato, ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, cheese. And I like to get it as a burro dog, which is all of that. Throwing jalapenos, pico de gallo, cilantro, just all of these fixing on there. And then they wrap all of this up in a burrito, in a tortilla. And so I've essentially got this bacon wrapped taco with all of these burrito fixings in it. My wife and I went there for lunch. One day, my daughter was at school this day, happened to be working from home, darted up there, had it for lunch. I ate it the next day, and then I ate it 2 days later. So it was that good. Like, it really, truly was incredible. Like, it really was terrific. And again, like, just all of that melded together in this. It was just, it really was the perfect on the go food, just grab and go sort of food.
I like that. There's another spot I actually just had for the first time today at lunch. Mm-hmm. So it's Teacher Appreciation Week, and the gal that handles like a lot of the events and stuff at my job, she got this restaurant that's right down the street from where I work. It is basically at, like, let's call it 63rd and Troost. It's called Wagwan. It is a Jamaican Nigerian restaurant.
Oh,
and the lady, her one parent is from Jamaica. Her other parent is from Nigeria. And so it is this one woman cooking like both sides of her family's recipes and kind of fusing a lot of these flavors together. And she donated all this food to the school that I work at, just donated it. And it is like a small one location family business. And she's like, oh, teacher appreciation? Yeah, sure. Here's a bunch of food. Folks, I'm telling you, I can't wait to go back to school tomorrow and hit up some of the leftovers that are hanging out in the fridge. And I told my wife, I brought some home for her, and we sat there and ate it standing up in the kitchen at like 5 o'clock today. It was like, we're going to go to this restaurant. I'm like, yo, we'll have this stuff. Good. Wagwan, big time.
Oh, that sounds incredible. Okay, well, I know where you and I are going next time I'm in town. So,
definitely.
Yeah.
I would love to go there. Yes.
All right.
So that place is pretty exciting too, here in Kansas City.
And now I know where we're going to go. We're going to go to a break, and we'll be right back.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
We are back with more of your questions for 21 questions. Let's keep going down the list here. I like this one from Just DRK. What's more likely, the Chiefs offense gets back to their rightful place as a top 3 offense, or the defense holds steady as a top 5 unit? What do you think, Ryan?
I think that right now it feels more likely that the defense do that. I don't know if people would have said that, going into the draft, maybe. When you lose a L'Jarius Sneed and a Willie Gay, you lose a Mike Edwards, there are a number of contributors that aren't going to be back, but I just feel so good about the coaching staff. I feel good about the moves that they made. And there's plenty of excitement on the offense. And they almost seem like recession proof, if you will. I really believe in this defensive program. And I just think that there are enough bodies that have the ability to take a step forward, along with some potentially like surprise new additions. I think that they're going to continue to play at a very, very high level. And maybe the biggest reason why, what I think has now become the most maybe underrated in terms of like importance positions on the defensive side of the ball. We are going to, ladies and gentlemen, get to watch a lot of Nick Bolton and True Tranquil together this year.
Oh my goodness.
We wanted to watch it all year last year. It seemed like it was pulling teeth to get them on the field at the same time. And that, ladies and gentlemen, buckle up, is what you're going to be seeing a lot of. And I think with those two guys roaming around the middle of the field, working together, working with Spags, and ultimately the way that they connect to all of the talent that they have in the defensive back room, Spags is going to put probably every single quarterback in a blender.
Yeah.
And they're just, I'm so excited to watch this defense. Maybe more excited than everyone except Craig Stout.
Listen, Jaden Hicks is not helping with any of that. Like, I get really excited thinking about the 3 safety looks or 4 safety looks, depending on, who's healthy and who's on the, I get more excited about that than probably anything in the front 7. And that's saying a lot because I'm front 7 guy. Like that's where my eye always is trained. I love the secondary, love the schematic stuff back there, but I've always gravitated towards the front 7. Jaden Hicks adding to this, it changes things a lot. But I'm going to go offense, Ryan, just because I think we're going to see a little bit different style of offense this year. I think it's going to be quicker, less methodical. I think we've grown accustomed to the efficiency, maybe not last year, but, kind of moving the ball more methodically down the field, less explosive plays, less of this big play capability. I think that's coming back this year. And if that's coming back this year, I have seen Steve Spagnuolo take his foot off the gas in the fourth quarter because he's protecting his stuff. He's not going to show everything. We're going to play a little more static cover too. Stuff like that. It's not that they're not going to be any less good than they were this past year. I think we're just going to see the offense be better, this Chiefs team be up more in the fourth quarter, and then we're going to see, the defense.
Spagnuolo shutdown mode?
Yeah, kind of. I didn't want... Listen,
his own version.
You a Dirk thing. I'm not. Listen, but no, it's kind of like that, where we've seen it be primarily dime, soft zone shells, 4-man rush, not really blitzing a whole lot. Not the hallmarks of what we see out of Steve when there's an obvious passing situation. If the game's close, he's going to light him up. He's going to throw everything at the quarterback that he can. If it's not, he doesn't do that. Like we're seeing him be a lot softer in some of those sort of things. So now all of a sudden, those numbers start to creep up a little higher than maybe they were last year when they had to be good all the time, when they had to be executing at a high level all the time. I still think they'll be good. Like, I still think we're going to get to the playoffs and we're going to be like, there's Spags again. But I think we might get to a point. I can already, looking for the future here, I can already see the articles that are just like, oh, with Steve Spagnuolo, 1 year wonder in Kansas City, he's back to normal again. It's like, guys, no, this is just who he is. Like, I can already see that that's happening. So I think that it's going to be the offense, but that's going to have a result on the defense not being able to kind of play the way that we got to see him play last year.
Well, listen, Craig, if the offense is as good as you think they're going to be, then, the defense is going to be in a lot of positions to just be able to tee off.
I mean, I would love that.
Do you have to earn the right to rush the passer if you're?
Hey, listen, Chris Jones is betting on the fact that the offense is great, so he doesn't have to earn the right to rush the passer. He can just rush the passer. Like, nothing would make him happier than just Steve turning to him at the halftime of every game and just being like, hey, buddy, they're going to throw the entire second half. Have fun. That's exactly what he wants. That's what he wants to do. So, yeah, it makes sense. But let's see here what we got. We've got Grayson here saying, does Ryan Raquel have a chance to win the punter spot? That's right. We have a punter question here. I think it's a little bit, I'll preface it with this before I throw it to you, Ryan. I think it's a little bit underrated what the Chiefs are doing at the punter position this year. We know they've got Punt God. We know that he's on the roster. He's only on the roster for 1 year, and he has not been a big holder. He didn't really hold for anybody, as part of the process until training camp of last year. Like, he did not do that at San Diego State. Ryan Raquel did at BYU. Like, this is a guy that did a lot of the things that Dave Toub likes it. He does not have even remotely close to the leg that Punt God does, but it matters. The holding aspect of that matters more than I think people want to give it credit to. I've just kind of seen people that have just been like, oh yeah, it's Arias' job to lose. Like, don't worry about it. It's his. He's going to be the punter for the future. He's on a 1 year deal. So I do think it's an open punting competition right now.
Has Wentz ever held? Like, I don't know. Like, is there a scenario where Ariza's, his leg is just far too good for them to pass on, and they just,
it is.
We can try to teach you, to be a holder, or we can use somebody that held in college and we'll just pretend like we're in the 90s again. And the backup quarterback is the holder. Something else to keep in mind here as far as the holding stuff is concerned. I mean, I think that we all remember the dark ages of 2022 when Butker got hurt. And I think that was more to do with it than anything. But the holds were so bad that Dustin Colquitt came out and said something, and it rubbed Tommy the wrong way. Ultimately, they got everything. I mean, both of them were absolutely pristine last year in terms of the holds and the kicks. All of the field goal game last year was just incredible. But I mean, it's not like everything was perfect all the time with Tommy. So maybe they can afford a few kind of learning moments, I suppose, especially if they're going to be a more explosive offense. Maybe they're not going to be kicking nearly as many field goals as they did last year when, especially once they got to like the Cincinnati game, we were a take the points team. Yeah. We were a football team. And I'm like, kick all the red zone field goals you want. In a perfect world, they're not going to kick as many field goals as they did last year, and it may not be as big a part of what they do. I don't know what the chances are. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't go much higher than like 60-40 Ariza because he wasn't in the league last year. You never know with these things. And like, we've got some tape on the guy where he's obviously got a very explosive leg, but I mean, who knows, man? Who knows?
It really is. Yeah. I mean, it's tough. Like, and I get that the leg is tantalizing. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, he is a field flipper in every sense of the word. But even when I wrote that up for the KCSN draft guide, I was still looking. I can't remember. Was it Jordan Stout that I had at punter 2 that year? I don't remember, and I'm not going to go back and look it up. If you guys have the KCSN draft guide, you can there too. On the live stream, when he was not the first punter taken, it was because the guy that I had at number 2, I went, oh, that makes sense. His placement is better. His accuracy is better. He's more of a, he can punt from different areas of the field. And it's not just a booming leg like Punt God was. Rakow's closer to that. Like it really is one of those that, he still has leg strength. I don't want to downplay it. It's just, it's such a rare leg strength that Punt God had. I don't know. I think that he's got just as much shot as the next guy. Like, I really do think that he's got just as much shot. And I think that we see everybody just being like, oh, yeah, no, it's a foregone conclusion that this other guy's going to win it. Just ERK has another great question here. You alluded to Nick Bolton being on the field a lot, but you're tranquil? He said, if Nick Bolton isn't extended by the start of the season, what % chance do you give it that he's still on the team in 2025? And he wanted to note the franchise tag for a linebacker is currently $24 million. That is hefty. What do you think, Ryan? If he's not extended before the beginning of the season, does that spell anything for Nick Bolton?
It spells that he's going to get paid even more than he was already going to. What it spells, because he's either hitting free agency or, he's going to have played out his 4 years, and the Chiefs are going to be in a rush to sign him before he can hit free agency. I don't see a scenario in which Nick Bolton is not, retire a Kansas City Chief, mostly because they drafted him from a local school. He was an instant impact player, even playing out of position as a rookie. Overtook a high-priced veteran inside of that rookie season, and has been one of the most recognizable faces on that defense. I'll use an example here that I think maybe everybody kind of already understands this, but like the only linebackers that get talked about nationally are guys that have reached that I make $20-25 million a year. They talk about Fred Warner. They talk about Roquan Smith,
CJ Mosley. Yeah.
Right. And beyond that, it's like Bobby Wagner is still being talked about, and he's 36 years old or something. Right. But like, we don't know that many linebackers nationally. And even like a very smart football mind, like a Mina Kimes or something. She doesn't talk about linebackers that much. Every time she talks about the Chiefs, Nick Bolton comes up in some way, shape, or form. Just listen to the way that they talk about him. Particularly, I think probably the most interesting thing that I learned as a fan last year was you talking about that rhythm of, I believe it's the third series.
It was the third. Sometimes it was the fourth, depending on the game, depending on how long the drives were. Yes.
So if you guys didn't catch this from Craig last year, he can explain it better than me, but the synopsis is that on routinely the third or fourth drive of the game, they would pull Bolton off the field, put Tranquil out there for a series, and then Spags and Bolton would essentially just sit on the bench and talk about what has happened and what they're then going to do. And Spags he's taking ideas from his, the captain of his defense. And he's like, oh, you think this is going to work? Okay, well then let's do this, this, and this. And I mean, the high level of communication, guys, Nick Bolton is like 24. He was a 21-year-old rookie, just like guys like Kingsley and Worthy. This is something that Brett Veach loves. So, I mean, he's going to be getting his second contract at 24, 25 years old. He will be a Kansas City Chief for a very long time. I don't think it says anything or changes anything if they don't get him paid like before the season starts, other than, sometimes contracts in the NFL are just complex. And we lost Brent Tillis, and that sucks too.
Yeah, that does suck a little bit. I'm curious to see what some of these contracts will look like after some of this. I don't think anybody's mad at the Travis Kelce contract. That's kind of the major one that's occurred so far here. But yeah, to your point, just to put some numbers behind it, Points per drive in those opening drives with Nick Bolton on the field playing the Mike linebacker. 2.1 points per drive. That's admirable. Don't get me wrong. That's okay, and 37.4 yards per drive. After they made that swap, after they pull Nick Bolton out there, and again, this came from Willie Gay Jr. in the years before, pulling him off the field, saying, here's what you need to do, here's the adjustments that we need to make, putting Willie back on the field. It helped. I know everybody looked at all those Darius Harris drives and was like, why is this man playing? Willie was much better when he came back on the field because he got that coaching. They looked at that and went, well, what if we do that with our super smart Mike linebacker that kind of runs the defense, and we get this drive, because we trust Drue Tranquill so much, we get this drive to really kind of react and change things. So again, 2.1 points per drive, 37.4 yards per drive. It went down to 0.7 points per drive and 19.9 yards per drive after he came back on the field. Had significantly more drives, obviously, coming back on the field than they did in those opening drives. They used those to feel things out, and then they used the input for that. That is why that man's getting paid in Kansas City. I think there's a 100% chance that he's get paid in Kansas City if they don't get it done before the beginning of the season. I think it's a 99.9% chance that he gets paid in Kansas City. I just think he's too vital. I think we're going to see this rotation continue. Like, we may see some Drue Tranquill and Leo Chanel on the field in the nickel together for drive 3 or drive 4, something like that. That's what I think that we're going to see, because it worked so well. That was a game changer this year. What they were able to do with Nick, that's not stopping. That's not changing. Just listen to Spags talk about the Super Bowl and asking Nick about, hey, how do you feel about that? Yeah, no, let's run that. That's the one. That's it. I feel super good about that one right there. He's running that by what he feels is his most valuable defensive mind that's on the field at any given time. They're not letting that guy go. He's too integral. So
you can also kind of just read the tea leaves and see like how quick and how often they are to put him on the microphone.
Holy cow.
And
every opportunity. Yes.
And honestly, like this is no offense to Nick Bolton, but like he's so boring. I mean, they've
had lots of boring guys at pressers.
He's
kind of right there with them.
The moves on the defensive side that like he's going to toe the company line. And, if you guys haven't heard Nick Bolton, he seems like a guy that has had a lot of caffeine. He talks really fast. It's almost like it's not nervous. It's just, I'm trying to get this over with and I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. And then I'm going to get away from this microphone.
And maybe it's because his brain is just working that fast. Like, it's the next thing. I want to get to the next thing. Here's the next thing. He plays football that way, too. Like, that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. But to Ryan's point, not the most engaging presser of all the guys. You compare it to Chris Jones, who's the other defender that they're like putting it up there. Chris is hyping everybody up, having a great time, but they want Nick to be on there first. Like, he's the guy that they're putting out there all the time. Justin Reed, very entertaining presser, has a lot to say, all of that. They like to put him up there too. Nick is still the first guy. Like, and always will be, because that's just kind of who he is. That's how valuable he is to the team. So
easily one of my favorite guys on the team still, even despite the boring pressers.
Yes. Oh, yes.
always go root pretty hard for.
And despite the fact that he's probably going to reset the linebacker market, and there's that discourse is going to suck. Like, it's just going to suck. It really is. But he's getting paid. We should all get used to the fact that he's getting paid.
Some kind of like haircuts, They say if you get a bad haircut, just wait 2 weeks. So you get a contract in the NFL and it's like, oh my God, he's the highest paid player in his position. Just wait 2 years. It'll be fine.
Yeah, just wait 2 years. All of a sudden, there's going to be somebody else that definitely does not deserve. Like, Kenneth Murray all of a sudden is going to get paid like a silly amount of money at some point by, we'll just call it the Jacksonville Jaguars. And,
it's the Kiko Alonso plan. It's the, oh God, who was the Quan Alexander? I mean, some of those like, wait, he got $15 million a year?
That amount of money. That is way too much money for that guy. I get it. I get it. But
kind of shocking that Willie didn't get that deal, in fact.
No.
Because it's purely like athleticism driven, it seems like, with those linebackers. But
yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, Nick's getting paid all the money. So the next series of questions came after the Rashee Rice stuff. So we've got a number. I'm going to speed run through a lot of these because a lot of them are people, kind of getting jokes off, and I want a hat tip to them. Our buddy, Charles Goldman. Have either of you ever assaulted a photographer trying to capture either one of your greatness? I know that was not just specifically for me, Charles. It was definitely for Ryan too. So, there was that one there. Let's see here. Why did being in this is Arrow again. Why did being in the Dallas Metro for the Shrine Bowl not cause you guys to commit crimes that you know of, Arrow? Let's see here. Nick Deal, now after this, with all of this out here, what's the one hole in the roster that you still think needs filling? Is it wide receiver or is it something else, in your opinion, Ryan?
This is an opportunity to talk about Rashee Rice, and so I'm going to say something that I want to say, and then I'll answer the question.
Yeah.
I feel so bad for this guy's lawyer. I don't know if you guys remember, but Rashee Rice's lawyer has kind of issued one statement right now so far, and it was obviously in response to the racing on the highway incident. Mm-hmm. His lawyer said, let's not judge someone's character based on one incident. Well, now we have two. And don't get me wrong, it is an alleged incident, so on and so forth. Talk about your all-time backfires. I just, look, we are right. I would say right now, fresh off that news. I mean, we've known for 24 hours that this is an allegation. Unless he does something else, this is as bad as it gets right now. This in the reactionary zone right after it, we're all not feeling great. And you can see through these two incidents, and then tracing back to some of the things that Ty Dunn was putting in his draft prep on Rashee Rice, and ultimately it seems like people that didn't want
had some as well. Yes, yeah.
We don't want to bash any kid's character.
No,
right? There are things that sometimes draft guys will allude to because they've heard it, but they don't want to put it out there because you don't want to just assassinate a kid's character. But when it starts to pop up as they're in the NFL, it's we heard about this and this and this in their past, and now you're kind of piecing things together, and that's what you're starting to hear about Rashee Rice. And I think that we're fooling ourselves if we can't see a scenario where this guy just doesn't know how to make the right choices. We've got a number of examples of it over the years of players that have all the talent in the world, but between the ears, they can't seem to make the right choices. And that is really scary for me. I do think that wide receiver right now, even with Worthy, even adding Marquise Brown, Rashee Rice was, for most people, the linchpin of that wide receiver room, and looked like, in a lot of ways, kind of the future of that wide receiver room. And we felt like in some ways we hedged, clearly he's going to get suspended, but this is an isolated incident. Well, now that there's a second one, when we can all everyone's made mistakes, but man, 2 in 6 weeks is a really, really unfortunate situation. And I think that the Chiefs would be, man, I would not feel good if they just rolled with what they have. It would feel like a different version, a better version, hopefully, but certainly a different version of what they went through last year. We've got a bunch of bodies. We don't necessarily know what we've got in a lot of these players. And the one guy that was able to establish himself last year, who knows how long he'll be out? I don't know, man. I would say that they definitely need to add somebody at receiver. But the other position that just jumps out to me, it's still defensive tackle for me, man. I'm not thrilled with the rotation. There's a lot of similar skill sets in that room, but it's also like, what are you gonna do there? I was fairly shocked walking away from that draft that they didn't take somebody. I mean, I think it was like, all right, we've got 2 4th-round picks, and I want this defensive tackle and this defensive tackle and this defensive tackle. And, you know, you see a guy like Mekhi Wingo on the board all the way in the 6th round. And I'm just like, what am I missing?
Yeah.
You know? So in some ways, Veach probably feels okay about where they're at. I'm not as confident as he is. It is an old room, and I don't think that it is particularly deep in terms of the like actual impact talent. So it's, you know, there's still Chris Jones, obviously.
Oh yeah.
But how about this? If a Minahu were healthy, I don't think that I would be like, and also defensive tackle.
I actually like that line of thinking, because now you're thinking sub packages. You're thinking another guy that can be a quick winner on the ends. Like I'm right there with you on that one, and not a guy when we did our defensive tackle preview on Monday that I really even considered in that role, because obviously, you know, he's listed as a defensive end, and we were thinking about him as a starting defensive end this year. Yes, I would feel a lot more confident about the defensive tackle rotation if we were just like, yeah, we've got some run stuffers, some space eaters, Chris Jones, and then another guy, if Chris Jones can't go in the dime, another guy that can line up at 3 technique and still win pretty quickly. So yes, no, I'm with you on that a little bit. Okay, we're gonna answer 2 more here. This one from V. Abe Froman. Are we expecting much out of Sky Moore this year? You just got done talking about wide receivers. What are your expectations in year 3?
Do you think that the bigger issue with Sky Moore is confidence, or that he just hasn't adjusted?
No, I think it's confidence. Like, I really do think it's confidence. I think we see, even in camp, we see a more confident player. We see a player that looks a lot better, that looks a lot more in tune. Patrick Mahomes is down there throwing in Texas with these guys, and the fact that he still talks about Sky Moore in a positive light means that it's there. It's happening. They see it on the field. They see it in practice. I think, yes, Ryan, to your point, I think it's confidence. He gets on the field, things aren't going great, and it just kind of dips at this point. I hate to speculate like that, but it just feels that way based on all the positivity that we hear about him in other realms.
It makes me think, this is a strained analogy, but for those of you that watched Ted Lasso, there's a moment when he has to have a real come to Jesus with Jamie in season 1, and he tells him, he makes the Allen Iverson practice speech, sort of, but he says, you know, you don't want to be at practice, and it's the only time that we have control. When it's game day, it's our 11 versus their 11, but at practice, like, we get to do everything the way that we want, right? And that just sounds like that kind of incubator for Sky Moore. He's going to feel comfortable. He's going to feel confident. Andy is always saying all these positive things about him. So is Pat. And like, I don't know if that's just like the human side they recognize. I mean, it's almost the way that Mike McDaniel talked about, I had to rebuild Tua. I had to get his confidence back up and tell him, like, no, dude, we believe in you, right? And I really thought that Sky Moore in the playoffs in 2022, after all the fumbles and everything, it's like, all right, man, Sky Moore glow up in the playoffs, and we really rode that momentum through the way that they were talking about him in camp. Last season was a huge surprise to a lot of people. I would have told you that Sky Moore was going to be the leading wide receiver, whether it's yards or catches or touchdowns. I thought he was going to be this huge volume player. And all the way up to week 9, 10, 11, I'm like, what is going on with this guy? I don't know what's going to happen with him, but the NFL stands for not for long. And people have got to keep in mind that, like, I know that he's a draft pick. I know he's cost controlled. I know he's cheap. if Sky Moore is not doing what they need to see, I don't see any reason why he gets to finish his rookie contract, because that room is so competitive. I hope for good things for this kid. I see a lot of ability there, but through 2 years, it has been a failed experiment. For lack of better phrasing, like that's what it feels like. It feels like we took a shot on a smaller school player, and it's just not working. You know,
he was better than all the players that he was going up against at a small school. He was better. He was more dominant than them. He could flex on them in that way. It feels closer to what he's seeing in practice. Feels closer to some of that built his confidence. He looked great in college. I predicted last year that he would lead the team in catches amongst wide receivers, not Travis Kelce, but amongst wide receivers, because I saw him. I was like, hey, listen, I feel like he's perfectly suited to just line up in the Juju role, and they could just kind of continue that. I understood why it didn't work with Juju on the field. You want a Juju on the field? Fine. That's good. You use that guy. They obviously won a Super Bowl. So now that Juju's gone, he's going to be in there. He's going to take these roles. They gave him every opportunity to do so. This was not like, oh, they got into the season and went, oh, Rashee's better. No, they did not want to play Rashee Rice early. They wanted to play Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore. Those were the guys that they wanted to lean on in that wide receiver and in BS. But those are the guys that they wanted to lean on in that wide receiver room, and it failed. Like, it just straight up failed miserably, to the point where they just said, hey, we know this rookie doesn't have the full playbook yet. We know he doesn't know everything he needs to know. We also know that he has drop issues, but we know if we can get him the ball, he can secure the ball. He can do electric things with it in his hands. So let's just bank on that instead of continuing to trot out a Sky Moore, continuing to trot out a Kadarius Toney who just kept getting hurt. But, I'm to the point now where I have to see something other than training camp or practice, because we can hear this all we want. He's got to do it. Maybe preseason, you see a little bit, you start to get a little bit more confidence under your belt. I just really think that that's it. That would be the biggest surprise in my mind for him to step up and become a player that he hasn't been so far in year 3, that he wasn't in years 1 or 2. It would be a great surprise, and I'm rooting for it. I would love nothing more, but I just don't see that path to that success right now based on what we've seen out of him. So.
He might be like their 5th or 6th wide receiver at this point, and it's not like a profound.
Would you rather see Justin Watson on the field other than him right now?
Yeah,
I know. That's where I am too, and that's scary. Yeah.
Some of that is he wins in the same areas as like a lot of other guys. But I mean, Sky Moore, what he's got, I'm looking at his game logs just to try to figure out, like, what is Sky Moore's best game? He had 5 for 63 his rookie year against the Chargers in LA, and that really fun walk-off game. And then he had 3 for 70 and a touchdown in week 2 against Jacksonville. And like, that's, that's about it. And I mean, it's just, it hasn't shown up, man. It hasn't shown up. And I think that there's just too many kind of redundancies at that position that it's like, I don't know, man. If they had, like you said, cause it's like, they keep seeing it in practice, like, cool, practices is great and all, but what about Sundays?
Yeah.
So let's see.
That's where I am with Sky. And I think that's where a lot of Chiefs fans are with Sky right now. We hope, we really hope, but clock's ticking.
The NFL late breakout is a lot less likely than the late college breakout.
Yes.
I would imagine it happens at a much, much, much lower rate. And even, the guy visiting the Chiefs on Thursday, May 9th, as reported by Adam Schefter, Zay Jones, that's a guy that is one of those exceptions. He, I believe, in year either 3 or 4, had his first good year as a pro for the Raiders, and then immediately went to Jacksonville, got a pretty decent chunk of money, had another great, 800 plus yard season, caught a bunch of touchdowns. And we're kind of still riding the coattails of that. He got a little injured last year.
Mm-hmm.
But like, he's one of the few that it's like, if you don't break out in like your first or second year as a wide receiver, like that might be it for you in the NFL. You're probably not going to get to those heights.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Last question. This will be a quick one. So we'll end on this one. This one's from Grayson. 800 yards over under for Xavier Worthy. That's a current line that's out there right now. 800 yards. Do you take the over or the under for Xavier Worthy this year?
Is that all purpose or receiving?
That is receiving.
That feels like a lot.
Yeah.
I want to say under because there is so much competition and everything there. But I mean, Rashee is going to miss time, and like Worthy will be the second receiver. That would just be my guess. Like, who are you on this roster starting over Xavier Worthy if Rashee Rice is not part of your lineup? It's him and Marquise Brown. Like, yeah, that's it. Like, are you going to start Justin Watson?
Maybe early, but not for very long. Yeah.
And I mean, ultimately, as far as the snaps are concerned, like, if this kid's as smart as they say he is, he's going to be on the field a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, man. That is because I am, as mentioned earlier, rooting for Xavier Worthy, and I like to be consistent. I'm going with the over, but that feels like a big number for a kid that is really only supposed to be like part of an offense, rather than like a focal point. The Chiefs are, Andy Reid even historically is not like, I've got a bunch of guys that going over 1,000 yards. They like to spread the ball around, and I think that Worthy is. I would feel more comfortable giving an over on like a 600 yard.
Yeah, see, that's the one that I get. Like 800 just feels too high for me. I'm an under on that. 800 feels too high for me. That's a fairly sizable contribution for a wide receiver not named Tyreek Hill in this offense. And I get that Rashee Rice just got done with 936 yards in his rookie campaign. If they had functional wide receiver play, Rashee Rice is not getting that kind of yardage. He's just not. Like, he's getting slowly integrated into the offense a little bit more. Now, your mileage may vary with the wide receiver play this year. If Rashee Rice doesn't get suspended for very long or at all in 2024, I've already been on record as saying Hollywood Brown is going to get volume targets in this because, again, he's not just a vertical guy. He's going to run the entire route tree. Hollywood Brown's going to get a lot of targets. Rashee Rice is going to get a lot of targets. Travis Kelce is going to get a lot of targets. Xavier Worthy is going to get plenty of targets, but he's going to have to basically maximize the yardage on every single one of those targets. If there's a guy that can do it, it's him. 4.21 speed plays, like it does. Like I totally get that. But trying to say that Rashee Rice in year one is going to be a player that doubles up the third highest receiver for the Chiefs, not just wide receiver. That includes Travis Kelce. Double up the third highest receiver from 2023. I don't think that's the case. Like that's a lot of targets. That's a lot of yardage that have to be spread around here. Travis Kelce's still going to get 900 and something yards. I think Hollywood Brown's going to clear 1,000. I think Rashee Rice is going to clear 750. We're running out of yards. I mean, I hope we're not running out of yards, but it feels like we're running out of yards. Stacking another 800 on there just feels like a lot. Now, as I said, he could make that up in minimal targets by just simply having a vertical presence in this offense that we haven't seen since Tyreek Hill. And we saw what Tyreek Hill was able to do with those deep shots and what he was able to do with that speed. So I'm not saying that there's no possible way of doing it. It just feels like a very, very outside chance. So I'm going with the under on that one.
It would be the third best rookie wide receiver, like receiving total in Chiefs franchise history, behind Bo and Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice came about 30 or 40 yards shy of Bo's rookie season record.
Correct.
And something that, I mean, it hasn't been that long. So hopefully you guys remember, especially for the people that play fantasy football out there, Rashee Rice was like a top 10 fantasy wide receiver down the stretch. Once he started to really become the focal point of the offense, it was like 6 or 7 straight weeks where Rashee Rice is getting 7, 8, 9 catches to be able to rack up those yards. And so it would take quite a bit of work for Xavier Worthy that if he starts slow, he's then going to have to start getting the volume, or he has to be as explosive as Build. And whether that is with those deep shots or it is his ability to like take a screen or whatever, this is the kind of stuff that you guys are here for, an hour and 10 minutes into 21 questions.
Hey, let's go. Okay. That's right. No, that was great.
All the things we know Xavier Worthy can do already.
I love it. No, I just thought that was very interesting. When Grayson posted that line, I had to actually go look it up, and I went, wow, that's a real line. Wow.
First round wide receiver line.
Yeah, and I get it. I do. I just think that there's enough mouth to feed that I think that Xavier Worthy getting to that point is going to be difficult.
I'd be really curious to see like what Ricky Pearsall's over-under is. He's in a worse position than Worthy in terms of like maybe target share or whatever in that offense. And they got to run the ball more than the Chiefs do.
They got to run the ball. That's the other part of that. Hollywood Brown has had 100 targets for the past 4 years in offenses that were in the bottom third in passing. Now he's going to the number 1 passing offense in the league by volume, not by yards, by volume. Like, it's going to be an insane number of targets. Again, people think of him as a fast guy that's just running down the field vertically. That is not what he is. He is so much more than that. They're going to throw the ball 150 times to Xavier Worthy, and there's going to be more too high. Travis Kelce's getting over 120, 130 targets. How many times is Patrick going to throw the ball before his arm falls off? Like, maybe 500, 600.
Hopefully like 10,000 more times.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. We are hoping however many attempts it takes to get him through the next 20 years in Chiefs red, if we're being, reasonable with our takes here. All right. That's going to do it for this edition of 21 Questions. I want to thank Ryan Scott Hall for joining me, my friend. This is always a wonderful time. This one was no different. I loved doing this with you. I am Craig Stout. For everybody here at KCSN, be kind to each other, and we will catch you later.